Good afternoon. Thank you, Dave, for the introduction. I appreciate the invitation by the Soybean Board. It is an honor for me to discuss this important topic among the great scientists we had today. This presentation comes as a summary, especially Dr. Petrie, Dr. Van Houten work in taking together the health aspects of the soybean meal, or the displacement of soybean meal 2 into the diet, into how to apply it into a commercial diet. So today I will wear a production nutritionist hat. The work that I'm going to present is based on internal work we did at Hanover in the time where I led the nutrition team. It took many years to assemble a strategic diet for summer months for pigs that will be sold during summer months. I won't take all the credit. Dr. Dean Boyd started the great work on soybean meal years ago, and together with Amanda Ellsberg, we assembled a strategy. So this presentation will show you the cost. The important points that I'm gonna make today is, one, the costly seasonal carcass weight dip that we observed. This is persistent. We see it year after year, and it can be anywhere from 6 to 12 pounds carcass weight of pigs, which is significant. So for us, it's a great opportunity to capture in the field. Two, and alluding to what Dr. Eric Van Houten mentioned today, is that when we formulate and focus on diets that decrease the price cost, but we don't go beyond the price cost, that's the result of that is the reduction in the carcass weight that we're observing. And the last point here is we have to be careful when we use ingredients such as corn DDGs, but it also applies to corn germ, wheat millings, because they will have an impact on feed intake. And if you use those ingredients for pigs that will be sold during the summer, the last thing you want to make is reduce the feed intake, because that's going to reduce your gain during those months. Alluding to the summer carcass weight dip, Dr. Steve Pohlman will say that this is one of the industry's greatest challenges to viability. I will say too is for us as nutritionists, it will be one of the biggest opportunities to capture if we have a strategy to do so. This is a time where the hog carcass weight, hog carcass price will tend to be highest. So this is a time where you want to capture revenue into your system. Sadly, this also coincides with the times where we had the lowest carcass weight. So going a little deeper into that, this is data from the last 5 years, excluding 2020, obviously because of COVID and very strange market conditions. But it takes you from 2019 to 2023. What we did is to assemble a summary out of the Iowa State estimated livestock returns and put the monthly price of the hog equivalent to the average yearly price for that year, just to standardize the price. And one thing I want to notice here and highlight is that during the summer months is where we tend to have up to 120% of the price of the hog relative to that year price. So for us nutritionists and producers, this is a great opportunity to capture in revenue. But like I said before, that coincides too with the decrease in carcass weight that can be anywhere from 6 to 12 pounds during the same time period, and which might start later in May, and it goes all the way to past September. Right? We're losing a big opportunity. We let our carcass weight go down into our system. And beyond the loss of the weight of the pigs and the loss of the revenue opportunity, if we go beyond there, in addition to having the lower weights, there's a major increase in the discounts if we have a greater proportion of lightweight pigs. So think about the discounts that lightweight pigs have it at the plant, but also in the processing plant. If that will increase the processing cost per unit of sellable meat, right? So that is beyond to what I want to present today, but something for us to consider and keep in mind. Now, what I have today is proof that the strategy we assembled together at Hanover make our weights to be equal during the whole year. This is shown into the red dots, into the green dots, sorry. 2025 carcass pounds will be the average target weight for the system. When we implemented this by the year of 2022, this is proof that we maintain our carcass weight coming into the plant. This is comparing to a very similar system, a very similar number of sows and pigs being processed in similar conditions, which shows the very consistent reduction in the carcass weight as we see in the industry. Now I'm gonna go to the following year, and I wanted to compare now Hanor data on 2023. This is live weight, and just as a way to compare to, in this case, MetaFarms data of 2023. And notice that MetaFarms 2023 data will show the typical carcass weight dip during summer months, and that without the use of our program in the second year, we maintain pretty much our weights, our target weights during the whole year. So thinking about contributing factors of this carcass weight dip, obviously summer has an impact. That's something is out of our hands. We have to do the best we can in the field, but that's primarily what's driving the carcass weight dip, and it goes, like I said, from May to August. The next two things is what I want to discuss today. One is we have detected an early decline in carcass weight that with the guidance of Dr. Polieski, we were guided and understand that this is related to the increased respiratory pathogens, thinking about the times when we start placing our pigs into finisher barns, and it's cold months, it's closure, that will increase some of the respiratory diseases. And we take the information Dr. Petrie was telling us about. That will, if we increase soybean meal into the diets and we see a positive response soybean meal, that will make sense. And then the next point goes to Dr. Eric Van Houten's presentation in the using of ingredients that might impact the feed intake or might impact the growth performance of pigs if we feed these ingredients on diets for pigs that are going to be sold during summer months. So specifically speaking about corn DDGs, which we have seen, and I'm going to show some data in the response of feed intake, decreasing feed intake, which then will decrease average daily gain for the pigs. But we also have to keep in mind other ingredients that have high levels of dietary fiber, such as corn germ, wheat millings. That's something we need to avoid into our summer diets. Now, speaking about feed intake reducing ingredients, DDGs is the one that I'm going to take to illustrate my point here. So what we did in 2019 here is this is a nursery study, and later I'm going to relate this to our grow finish data we have. But DDGs, we will replace soybean meal into the diet. So in the trial, what we did is to increase DDGs from 0 to up to 20% into a late nursery diet. As you know, this might be attractive for nutritionists and companies alike because it reduces my diet invoice, my diet cost, right? We have to go beyond that, and that will be a point I want to make today because as I apply these diets to my pigs, the first response that I will see with DDGs is a linear decrease in average daily feed intake. Now we know that the pigs will be a lot more sensitive early in the growth phases than later, but it's a concept that I wanted to make a point for the next few slides. Now that decrease in feed intake, in the case of this study, decreased the final body weight of those pigs, and you can see that this is a drastic decrease from 54 pounds to about 52 pounds when we get to 20% increase added DDGs into the diet. And because of the reduction in body weight, we calculated that it will decrease the full value pig, meaning that it will decrease the percentage of pigs that will move into a finisher barn. So that's substantial if we're thinking about the revenue side of our equation into the system, which will be the number of pigs that I want to sell during that summertime, and the weight that I want to get with those pigs during summer months. So the data I show relates to nursery performance, nursery pig performance. This data is a bit outdated. It's internal data as well. It comes from technical memos of 2003 and 2007, but it relates to the same concept. As I increase DDGs into my diet, all the way from 0 to 30% in this first graph in your left, there's what we observed in this case was a quadratic response in feed intake of the pigs, which then translated in a quadratic response, quadratic decline in the carcass weight gain to the pigs. So my point here is that we have to avoid these ingredients that will cause a reduction in feed intake, because that's going to drive a reduction in the carcass weight gain. I'm not going to go into the details of each of the studies that we took together to assemble the program. The purpose and the nature of these presentations is rather take the concepts that we have heard this morning and put it into a case, in this case, a summer diet that maximizes the feed intake of the pigs. The key aspects of these programs were we couldn't use fat anymore. As you know, fat prices relative to corn were really high. So increasing the energy level of our diets were inaccessible financially. Taking some of the work we did internally and now looking at the work Dr. Eric Van Houten has done, we did similarly internal in our system to assemble a minimum soybean meal level, a biphase, to assemble a soybean meal minimum inclusion curve that will maximize, in our case, it was growth performance and growth gain of our pigs. And the last point, the main point here in the strategy was to avoid or not include any DDGs into the diet because of the response that I show in feed intake, because we didn't want to drive carcass weight down. Now, for the purpose of the presentation here, what we did is to take 3 diet formats, a high energy diet that will be a representation of our past format for summer diets. This will be the proposed summer soybean meal program. And we compare if someone will ask, what if I can decrease my energy and use a low energy, use a low soybean meal, and allow DDGs to come into my diet? Because I'm attracted to a lower total cost of my diet. But I will challenge you to go beyond the diet cost invoice because of the performance response. You have, we learned in the previous presentations, we have to put together performance along with diet costs to really assess the value of my diet program. The reference, this is a reference diet cost, and it's taken from POP 2024, we just heard this morning too. So a nice data set of prices that allow us to do these kind of comparisons. Now, moving forward into this is showing the response of the population to both a low energy diet format and a summer soybean meal program. I like to highlight here that this model and these response curves were described from 4 internal studies. I won't have the time to go into the detail, and I can provide the details, but the model will tell us that if we apply the diet format during summer months, we will achieve a higher carcass weight with a soybean meal based program. About extra 4 pounds, carcass pounds is what we calculate. And the performance will be a lot higher than the low energy diet that has a low soybean meal and it allows DDGs to come in because of the impact, especially in the impact of feed intake into my pigs. Because weight drives the percentage of pigs that will go into the plan and the live pigs. Calculating a plant-based price that I'm getting paid for my pigs is important. Being superior for my soybean meal program, a lot more superior than the low energy diet format. That if you remember will be the lowest cost, but we have to go beyond the cost, right? As an illustration here, comparing the low energy format and the summer soybean meal program, I want to highlight the percentage of lightweight pigs because this will be affecting your revenue side. The plant will impose a big discount of these pigs, so this is important. Now, the outcomes of this program, I show you early, just to start the conversation here, what happened in 2022. Now, I wanted to compare month by month closeout information for my carcass weight between the high energy diet, a format that we'll use in the past that included added fat, but also included DDGs into the diet, with our proposed summer soybean meal program that doesn't include fat, but has an optimal level by phase of soybean meal into the diet. Now, notice here that when we apply the program during the months of May, June, July especially, we have a higher carcass weight. We were able to maintain, as we desire, as a producer will desire, the carcass weight through the year. Now, applying the hog price, right? This is important part of the equation of the revenue. So we took the hog price of 2022, applied to the same data set I showed you before. Notice that I'm capturing the weights of my pigs and the revenue side when the price of the pig is highest, and that's my point today. This is a very big opportunity for producers, so don't let it go. And for our calculations, for our systems, and in the year of 2022, this was up to $14 per pig. So this is huge opportunity for producers if you are to capture it. There comes from two parts of the equation. One is a lower diet cost when we compare to a high energy diet because of the fat level into this diet. But it also have to remember the benefits of adding soybean meal, especially if you find that optimal level by phase or your soybean meal curve that allows a higher performance of your pigs. Now, this was my first time seeing the curve that Dr. Eric Van Houten has proposed. This is a curve that we have designed internally using the 4 internal studies at Hanor. It's assembling those studies, and we came up with soybean meal level inclusion. This is the minimum level of soybean meal we want to have in each of the phases, and it goes from 600 pounds in our case, so about 30% of your diet, and all the way to 200. So it assembles very nicely to the curve that was just proposed by Dr. Eric Van Houten. Now, this curve was based on soybean meal dose titration studies. Soybean meal was in exchange of DDGs, and the outcomes, all of these 4 studies were based on carcass weight of the pigs. The memos are described here below. And now, as we design the diet and we want to apply it, I think we have to remember that we start putting weights on these pigs. We start feeding these pigs in February, March time, and 4 pigs that are going to be sold starting in May. So remember that, and as you implement each of the phases, the timing is right. It's not that we're feeding all these diets just during summer months. Actually, the first group of pigs will come out. It will be late May, and they start being fed late February. So what will happen in 2024? So just to give you an idea, at the time we prepared the presentation, we got some projected diet costs of $2,020 per ton, and a pig price. We applied to this model a pig price of $90 per carcass, 100 carcass weight. Now, the same 3 formats of diets I'm showing here is the high energy diet, which is inaccessible today. Look at the price because of the price of fat. Now, summer soybean meal program, it will be a lot inexpensive relative to that diet. But someone might be attracted to use a low energy format or low soybean meal diet format because of the reduction in diet price. Now, again, I will challenge you that you have to take that to the next step, apply the performance of the pig, calculate your feed cost per pound of gain, because that's what really matters, right? And then 2, when I apply the revenue side, my pig price, especially during summer months, and thinking about a conservative $90 per 100 carcass weight here, my best program will be a program that includes a minimum level of soybean meal that maximizes the growth performance of pigs. I want to maximize the carcass weight of those pigs. That's what is going to drive revenue. That's going to drive profitability into my system. So my take home here, is that the seasonal carcass weight dip is, to me, is one of the greatest opportunities we have. And we have formats now, we have here information today that will allow us to capture that opportunity. Be careful and understand your feed ingredients that you will use into your diets. You will need to see what is the response, especially to feed intake and carcass weight gain. If you're applying to grow finish phases into your program. This is especially important during summer months because the last thing you wanna affect is the carcass weight gain of your pigs. To us, the soybean meal-based nutritional strategy look beyond the invoice price, maximize feed intake. To us, it maximize grow rate of the carcass to the levels we apply into the diet and the margin over feed costs. To implement this diet, it will require for you to analyze, understand what's your optimal soybean meal dose by phase that maximize that crop performance. And remember that you have to start feeding these diets right early in the growth phases. So you need to start implementing these diets in February if you want to capture this value. And with that, I want to acknowledge the work great people did. Not only me, as I mentioned before, Dr. Dimboy started this project. Together with Amanda Ellsberg, we designed the program. We were guided by Dr. Steve Pullman in the value on the carcass weight dip during summer months, and Dr. Polieski into the health component of the pigs when we close our barns during winter months. Thank you very much.